Hi, my name's Bob. We're sitting here in the Medicine Wheel Garden, Toronto. Yeah, so it's a great space to come and clear my mind and I bring a few people over. I work at NAMI Res, Native Men's Residence, not too far from here. And as one of the life skills, we come over here and chat, and there's another person that co-facilitates it, and he'll do some teachings on the various plants and herbs that are here. So trying to keep that a part of the culture and keep it strong, and and plants and being connected with each other and the earth is an important part of First Nations culture, and an integral part. And being in Toronto, being a city, there isn't a whole lot of spots like this, but so we make it work. So with some of my experience working with youth, I think diversity is important when it comes to the type of First Nations youth that I worked with. Some of them would come from different areas. Some were coming from more rural areas where there was a lot of space in between like neighbors and even friends, and some of the youth would have as part of their community, there wasn't just the mom and the dad, but there was also aunts and uncles and grandparents, and so the teachings would vary across the family line. And some youth had difficulties as well with not having a parent in their lives, or there might have been some things going on in the community that kept them from a distance from mainstream culture with the youth. And I found that some youth that would come in that I would work with would have a hard time relating to examples used in the classroom. Or even the interpretation of like language. There would be that language barrier, or the curriculum would be not culturally sensitive, and so it'd be really hard for youth to engage in what we were trying to help them with. A few things that were going on were definitely significant trauma in the community, whether there wasn't any, the water wasn't good, or good nutritious food, good mood food, I guess. It just wasn't there, and so kids that would come into the classroom would already kind of have some barriers placed in front of them, just with nutrition even. So, and then depending on the age of the youth too, kids want to probably kind of just, rather than stand out, maybe try to fit in or be friends, but sometimes other kids can be quite critical of each other, and so some of the youth would come in and maybe they didn't have the best in-style clothing, or have the up-to-date, like, technology is big, so maybe they didn't have as much as everybody else did. So I don't know, a lot of distraction, I guess, when we would teach different youth things, especially with the food. I found food and trauma seemed to be a big thing that affected a kid or adolescent's ability to comprehend some of the things that we taught. And then there's the other group of youth too that would come from urban areas, and and would be influenced by the urban influence. And once again, based on context and family, or some youth aren't living with their actual parents or their actual blood family, but they might be living with friends and have difficulties, and be quite shy when they come to class, or less eager, I guess, to jump into activities that weren't culturally sensitive, and would kind of just shy away. What I found that worked the best, I think, with just not making it so obvious that there was differences and separation between cultures and ethnicity in the classroom, or even in open spaces, and trying to engage everyone in fellowship, and and not have that separate, like, native, non-native attitude, and try and find activities and examples in learning that we all can connect to. I know what tended to work a lot is anything to do with the arts, not just like painting and stuff, but like anything that would stimulate any of us. Getting out together and doing activities that involve teamwork, that helped, and just trying to really cater to everyone's needs, whether it be through education or recreation, or and kind of the more we did outside, especially with youth, the better, because some people would, I think, from what I could see, could find their own space outside and still be a part of the group, whereas in a classroom it's hard, because it's like you sit there and you have to be quiet and absorb as much as you can, as whether it be a teacher or facilitator. And it's more of the teacher or facilitator or whoever is conducting programs and stuff. It's more like they're talking at youth, and whereas if there's activities outside, and it's in the idea of them sitting in a circle and kind of talking with each other as opposed to at each other, seem to work. Incorporating all the elements of being outside and inside, and keeping that balance, rather than just kind of trying to have youth that might have various things going on that are distracting them, and trying to force them to sit in a chair and just absorb everything, and then regurgitate back to either myself or somebody else, so then they can pass the test. So my journey these days is I work predominantly with adults. I started my career in social work, working with youth, and I've been lucky enough to go to different areas with social work, everything from working with youth to good food projects and food security, and working with adults, and I've worked on a few projects with end-of-life care as well, so I've kind of got an eclectic view of different things when it comes to social work. And what I find now, working with adults who have grown up similar to what we were talking about as youth, and having difficulties in school, is this sense of empowerment, and they're survivors. And I find with the legacy of residential schooling and how it's had that effect on generations, I notice the guys that I work with now, it helps when they can kind of go back to a time when things were going okay for them as youth, and even as adults, to have that opportunity to re-explore or develop a sense of wonderment that they once had as youth. And that wonderment comes in many forms for people, and it's very personal. And when I bring guys out to the garden such as this, it initiates a new narrative for them. And so having these different areas, for guys that are like the group of people that I work with, some of them, they're not all survivors of substance use and addiction. Some of them had significant other things go on in their life with mental health and addictions, and socioeconomic issues, housing issues. So it's not just one thing that's problematic for the group that I work with. But one thing that I do see is when guys can kind of have that brightness come into their lives again when they have the opportunity to share some wisdom. And because a lot of the guys that I work with, when they first come to see me, they feel so emotionally and spiritually bankrupt, and their body and minds and hearts ache from the mistakes they've made or the traumas they've experienced. And a lot of that starts from a young age. Someone or something or events have told them that they're no good and they're worthless. And if certain things can happen when people are kids, and to provide a safe space and opportunity to go to be a kid, and to encourage that sense of wonderment and that place, and it would help definitely in their adulthood. And I know some of the guys that I work with I view them all as success stories. They've made it this far and they've gone through so much, but there's this sense of peace when they can kind of look at their past and without any coaxing or any kind of convincing from me, see it as a part of their journey. And I believe that life is cyclical. They can kind of take that experience and have a time to use that and help the generations of youth to come. And it starts from a young age, and what people are being taught. And like the stuff that was taught to youth years ago, especially when I work with the older guys, is very Eurocentric. And there was a time where they weren't allowed to be themselves or to be native, or people really wanted to take that culture out of them. And another thing that helps guys these days too is to be able to regain that freedom to get their language back, their native language. Someone told me once that once a language dies, then a culture dies. And so that restoration of language, a sense of wonderment, and having that opportunity to teach youth of this generation in their own words, not in my words or out of a book, but in their own words with their own narrative. And I think that is part of a better future for the community and teaching in general.